The title of this video is How the Power of Surrender Can Transform Your Life. If you are on a serious, committed path of self-discovery, growth, and enlightenment, then there's one main process that will continually take you there, and that is surrender. Whether your body is healthy, whether you're a multimillionaire, whether you have a wonderful relationship, and have everything that you could ever imagine wanting, the only thing that really matters is if you have completely surrendered. Because it is only through complete and total surrender that you can reach and fulfill your ultimate evolution and destiny. Now, that's not to say that the other accomplishments are wrong or bad. Of course not. In fact, when you understand surrender, you're also empowered to have whatever else you want. It's kind of a paradox. The more you surrender, the happier and more fulfilled you become. And this is because growth means letting go of the person you once were. Not because that version of you was wrong, but because it was incomplete. When you cling to what's familiar, you anchor yourself to limitations. But when you release your past, you open the space for divine transformation, for evolution, for progress. It creates movement, unfolding the true self. You make room for higher evolution to unfold through you. So you must look at your life and see what you're trying to stay attached to, and then surrender it. Now, I know this seems strange to the mind, because the mind perceives surrender as giving up everything that you could ever want. And if the purpose of life is to give up everything, who would want that? I mean, what would be the point if you have to give up everything? Well, that's not what surrender means. It means it's a release of the clutching, the grasping, the desperation, the holding, the needing, the craving, and otherwise attaching to something. So because the mind and the ego misunderstand what you are doing when you are surrendering, you may find yourself confronted with a conflict, or maybe a fear over releasing too much, and culminating with complete dissolution and ceasing to have any kind of a meaningful life. Or, taken to an extreme, even giving up any kind of an individualized existence. So to the ego, this is its ultimate fear. So it hangs on to things very tightly, more tightly than a drowning person hangs on to a life preserver. Because to the ego, it's a life and death issue. It thinks surrender means that you are going to disintegrate all of your existence. It's deathly afraid of that. The fact that you exist is proof that you will continue to exist. Everything necessary for you to exist in this moment brought you here, and it will carry you forward. The soul, which is the immortal part of you, cannot fully express itself unless the ego is relaxed and released. You see, what you see in the mirror and what you think of as you is actually a construction of the ego and the creation of a personality. And this ego construct surrounds the soul. It's creating layer upon layer upon layer. So most people aren't even aware of what the soul is or if they have a soul. It keeps the soul from its fullest expression. What happens in the manner in which everyone gets caught is thoughts, and even unconscious thoughts and beliefs, create instantaneous energy shifts. that you are not even normally aware of because they happen automatically and seamlessly in your background awareness. So you might be going in one direction and suddenly you find yourself feeling something and you wonder where it even came from. Because most of what drives us comes from the unconscious places. And each and every thought has an effect on you. It has an effect on your life stream. Another word for life stream is timeline, your whole pattern of all the effects that you have set in motion throughout history. For instance, struggles, anger, fears, frustrations, and other reactions to external conditions, they pop up in your life all the time. And you're not usually aware of where they come from. So you find yourself feeling sad or moody or angry or irritated, and you're not even sure why. And this is because they all emanate from the subconscious and unconscious places, and they cause you to create your own obstacles. The reality is they've come from the very deepest places within you, your deepest thoughts, memories, and perspectives, many of which you are not even consciously aware of. So they might be simply passing wisps or thoughts or emotions, unless and until you focus on them. And then they'll begin to solidify into a problem. They permeate and perpetuate as long as you put your attention on them. So if you give them energy through fear or guilt or anger or worry or anxiety, you're putting energy into them, empowering them, and the very thing that you are wanting to release persists. What you resist persists. And so the antidote is to learn to surrender, which simply means deeply releasing and letting go. And then once you do that, you move into trust. So deep surrender leads you to deep trust. Whatever you keep emotionally reacting to is what you energize and what you sustain. There's a story of a famous tightrope walker named the Great Blondin. And this was back in the 1800s. In 1859, he stretched a high-tension wire 1,100 feet across Niagara Falls. It was 160 feet above the water. And he went back and forth across that wire several times, never repeating his last performance. So he crossed on a bicycle, he did backflips, he walked across blindfolded, he crossed on stilts, and he even went by carrying a man on his back. And one of the more famous things he did was he cooked and ate an omelet halfway across the wire. Thousands of people were watching him do this. And when he safely reached the other side, he said to the crowd, "Do you believe I can do this again?" And the crowd said, "Well, of course, yes." So then he got a wheelbarrow and he put the wheelbarrow on the wire and he said to the crowd, "Do you believe I can take this wheelbarrow across the wire with me?" And again, the crowd said, "Yes, we believe you can." And then he said, "Great, get in the wheelbarrow." Well, nobody did. The point of the story is there is a difference between belief and trust. There's a difference between belief and a fact. So what you think you believe is challenged by your level of trust. Trust reveals the depth of a belief and takes you from proclamation, from words, to action. The deeper you are surrendered, the deeper you will be living in trust. So you can use one to kind of measure the other. So for instance, let's say you put up a meter in front of you that goes from 0 to 100% with a big red needle in it. And you ask yourself, how deeply do I live in trust? And then you let that meter move back and forth until it hits a number. You'll probably find that it's less than 100%. And that means that you are not fully surrendered. So what is it that you're holding on to? You see, beliefs are not static. They're not the same as facts. They can change. And there are degrees of belief and degrees of commitment to those beliefs. The problem is you're heavily invested in your assumptions and beliefs. And you live by these beliefs as if they are absolutely true. You assume some of your beliefs are given facts, but many of them are not, as evidenced by the fact that not everyone has the same reaction, and they're not as affected by the same set of so-called beliefs or circumstances. You could have 100 people all witness the same thing and even experience the same thing, but each of them will have a different take on it or a different interpretation of it. Now, every day, you make choices of what beliefs to empower, and often you end up giving energy or power to what causes you pain or struggling or some other discomfort. And maybe this sounds to you like an oversimplification, because you might be thinking that you can easily release a painful belief. But in everyday life, it doesn't seem to happen so easily. In fact, it takes quite a bit of attention to unravel and uncreate the patterns which were created through past thoughts and experiences and conclusions and formed beliefs. In addition, if you realize that you have been creating your current status for many hundreds, or who knows how many lifetimes, I think then you can see why problems simply don't go away because we wish them away or want them to go away. Now, in most cases, you probably don't remember all the specific incidents from the past, and certainly from past lives, that created the energy patterns that then form your life today. But you do have certain memories of feelings about some things. Sometimes you have moods without knowing where they come from. So there's a feeling there, even though you don't know why. Every day, there are attitudes, there are feelings, there are energies that arise. And you're not even sure why they come up. So you can identify a specific incident, you don't remember it, but there must have been something. The fact that something is affecting you now is proof that you have empowered these patterns in the past. Something happened that caused you to react a certain way, to have a certain emotional reaction. And that's why you're feeling it now, even though you don't remember the original causative event. You may think that what you are emotionally reacting to came from nowhere, just sort of came out of the nothing. But all the energy patterns that you have empowered in this life and past lives will continue to create and will continue to be energized and create new situations until you release the energies causing them. So here's the key. Look to the feelings, not to the people. You see, the people are only playing roles to the scripts that you have written through your decisions, your conclusions, your beliefs, and the emotional reactions you put into those beliefs. And even if you don't remember the origin of the condition, your feelings reveal to you the patterns that you have established and you're still holding. Everything comes from a pattern of established energy. This is what we normally call karma, the perpetuation of previously established energetic patterns or reactions. There are 3 simple but important steps for manifesting what you want. 1, by getting in touch with any negative feelings about yourself and any beliefs that you can't have what you want. For instance, you may be feeling guilty or unworthy or lacking an ability to have what you want. Secondly, you surrender your need for the feelings, which thereby diminishes the energy that sustains the negative pattern or the negative belief. And third, you then focus on what you do want, the positive things that you want. And the associated energy that goes along with that would be happiness and maybe feeling joyous and having fun. And these happy feelings then empower your life because you've removed the resistance. Now, it's pretty simple. Let me repeat the second step. You identify the feelings of being defeated, guilty, angry, or lacking an ability or talent, and you say out loud, I surrender and release all need for this. And then you state the feeling. Now, I didn't say it was easy. I did say it was simple. But don't make it complex. It's not complex. First, you must identify what you want to get rid of. That makes sense, right? It's going to present itself to you in the form of feelings, thoughts, and beliefs, or maybe even pictures and memories. But there'll usually be feelings or emotions, and the emotions are what fuel the thoughts and beliefs, and they are what fuel the pictures and keep the memories alive. So feelings are the most important of all of these causative factors because they energize and they hold the pattern that leads you to the core. In addition, there are voices attached to the feelings. So when you follow the negative feelings and the voices and you surrender the need for them, you release your mind from holding them. And you can eliminate them entirely of all the disturbing and all the limiting issues. Now, there's one more step that I would add for releasing, and that is to incorporate some form of energy clearing. You use whatever you're most familiar with. You might use Reiki energy or aura raking, where you just literally brush it off and rake it off, or use an image of a vacuum cleaner vacuuming off the thoughts and beliefs and feelings, all those things that are holding the negative patterns in place. There is an aspect of the ego. The ego, remember, is your personality. It's who you think you are. It has all of your characteristics. And it's always wanting things to be different from the way they are. It wants the outside world to be a certain way. And when it isn't, it generates sadness or anger or a fear. Probably every day you feel controlled or maybe trapped by your conditions, and therefore you're not able to express who you feel and know you are deep down inside. Situations continually come up, pushing you to grow, which basically means letting go of who you're used to be. When you successfully do this, you grow and evolve. So the next phase of your evolution and development is what I call healing. Healing is stopping the damage the negative emotions and ineffective beliefs are doing. Emotions are never about what is outside. If they were, that would mean that for you to feel good, it would mean that everything outside would have to be wonderful. And that's not very likely on this planet, at least not for any sustained period of time. The way we affect healing in the context of the way I'm using the word is through connecting with the inner source of your being. This is what I refer to as the soul. This connection with the light and the presence of your source means increasing your knowledge, awareness, and experience of the soul. And you do that by recognizing the next place to invite it to enter. If you are consistent with this practice, it will keep you in a state of continuous growth, evolution, progress, moving forward. And then that deepens your experience and reality of your soul and that divine presence that is you. It lives in you, it lives through you, it lives with you, it is you. But on the other hand, if you allow yourself to be ensnared in, say, anxiety or anger, for instance, they can take you to a very dark place that increases the negative emotional states. So you can go from nervous to scared to being terrorized. Or another way that this can work is if someone does something to irritate or anger you, you can say to yourself, I'm not supposed to be angry or afraid. I'm supposed to be spiritual and calm. This self-judgment cuts you off from your soul. It disconnects you. One of the big problems facing people is they don't stop to look at their lives this way. You experience a disagreeable situation with someone, and then you think to yourself, what's wrong with this person? Thinking the other person is the problem and blaming the other person. But the fact is, it's not the other person. It's an energy pattern that you're actually interacting with. The other person is also locked into a similar pattern. So you've been drawn to each other because the same or similar type of energy exists in both of you. That's why you keep attracting the same kind of people into your life. Furthermore, you would not even bring out the trait that you don't like in the other person if it were not in you in the first place. This is why it is said that when you judge others, you are judging yourself. It's also why it says, if you see a splinter in your neighbor's eye, remove the beam from your eye first. Now, this is not an easy teaching to come to grips with. It's not an easy thing to admit to yourself. You might not have understood this before because you can more easily see the traits in others that you don't like and say to yourself, well, I'm not that way. This is one of those things that is simple but not easy. Observing a trait in another is discernment. But if your life is affected by the trait that you see in the other person, it is because there is that same energy in you that has attracted it to you. And it's enabling it to manifest in your life. If it were not part of you or in your energy field, you would not experience that particular energy from that person. You might observe that other person treating others that way, but they would not be that way with you because that part of them is no longer existing in you. And therefore, you do not bring out that part of them into your life and the way they interact with you. Therefore, you would not be affected by it. If you don't deal with the negative quality first, it's sort of like praying against a prayer because you're continually putting out an energy of fear or anger or some other upset about it. And that's like a fear prayer going out or an anger prayer going out into the universe. And it neutralizes the prayer that you've been praying of what you do want. So that prayer could be positive affirmations, or it could be visualizations, or it could be literal prayers. But it's more difficult for it to manifest. So because we're like transmitters constantly putting out the energy of what our beliefs are, therefore, it is more difficult for it to manifest no matter how hard you pray or do positive affirmations, because you have a counter prayer, so to speak, going against it. Now, even if you don't see the trait in yourself, the fact that you are experiencing it tells you that it does exist in you. Therefore, you can just assume that it is there. And therefore, what you want to do is surrender and release all need for it. And probably even incorporate some sort of an energy clearing technique with the statements of releasing it. As you discover these patterns, you gradually unravel the patterns that have accumulated for lifetimes. Because they lay down layer upon layer upon layer. Every time you have a particular reaction, you create another thought form layer that gets piled on top of the other ones that are similar. So you have layer upon layer upon layer. If you think about all the times you've gotten angry or upset or discouraged or depressed in a lifetime, there's a lot of layers to these things. And you will eventually return to the pure state of consciousness as you peel them off. And underneath all of that is the soul, which is free of disturbances, free of disappointments. The soul does not become angry. It does not have fears. And that's what you're trying to get to. So you start with a recognition and a willingness to release something. Most people who say they want release mean they only want to release from some kind of a pain that they're experiencing. And they're not ready to give up their position or their belief that's sustaining it. You must want to release the energy of the situation and the energy that caused the situation in the first place. And that means you want to shift your consciousness. You want to get out of the vibration that creates and attracts those things. So maybe you thought, well, I'll just talk to someone about it. Maybe a priest, maybe a minister, maybe a psychologist. Conventional talk therapy presumes that you want to release the negative experiences, but they don't actually address how to remove the subtle energy patterns. So while you might get some tools to cope with it, or maybe some pharmaceuticals to suppress the symptoms, they quite often don't solve the issues. They just cause them to recirculate. Virtually every pattern that is driving your life initiated in a past life, and you probably have little or no memory of it. But your life is a continuing saga of energy patterns that go back through space and time, forming interconnecting webs and cords. and they draw energy from many dimensions. So this brings up a common question. A common question is, why do bad things happen to good people? Well, first of all, there are not bad things. There are only incidents and experiences. And although experiences are sometimes interpreted as bad because they bring pain or difficulties to the individual, each of these experiences spring from an energy seed that was planted in the past and it was left buried. You see, each lifetime that you incarnate into picks up where the previous lifetime left off. So you end up dealing with the same issues, even if you don't remember what the specific triggering event is or was. These patterns are like seeds, and they're left to sit there until they germinate, and then they'll come to the surface. Something triggers them or brings them up, and that gives you the opportunity to address it once again. So what are you going to do with it? Somebody does something that upsets you, you get all angry about it. Well, if that's what you're going to stay with, you've just added another layer. But if you can catch yourself and release yourself and clear yourself of that anger energy, then you'll release that layer, that pattern, and you won't have a force in there that attracts or causes something to happen to you that you don't want. So on this physical dimension that we live on, life is played out in a very slow sequence of unfolding energy patterns, and they'll keep resurfacing from time to time until each particular pattern runs its course and simply runs out of energy, or over many lifetimes, you finally figure out that you can address it and clear it. Any individual who is willing to look at those patterns and not fall into self-pity or feeling victimized by maybe some other outside force can take a very active participation in dissolving those patterns that cause the things to repeat in a person's life. So all of the things that you experience are because of energies that you've set in motion in other lifetimes or in this lifetime in the past. In many cases, you don't remember them. That would go for the positive things as well as the negative things. So the individual can experience the goodness that comes from life created and sustained with love and joy. Your life is composed of your beliefs, opinions, and habits that are constantly sustained by your conscious and subconscious mind. So even when you're not consciously thinking about them, the patterns are still there, and therefore they're being reinforced, that they're being energized by your own life force energy. You maintain your energy patterns whether you're consciously thinking about them or not, or even whether you are aware of them or not. These energy patterns are composed of beliefs, feelings or emotions, and memories. And they will cause manifestation depending on what they believe they are. It's just a matter of time. It's actually inevitable. Now, when you're in a meditative state, the patterns can be cleared much more quickly than trying to deal with them through just talking through them or talking about them. The truth about the forces affecting your life can be released in one lifetime, things that might have been plaguing you for many lifetimes. Energize the desire and intention to dissolve the core of the issue, and you continue the process and doing that until it is dissolved, and it will dissolve. These are thought forms that are composed of life force energy, and you can dissolve them. It wasn't very long ago, I was in communication with some advanced spiritual beings, non-physical beings. And I do this sometimes in meditations. And we were discussing a healing light experience that I had at Mount Shasta in 2002. I've talked about this and I've written about it, so I'm not going to repeat it here. I call this the miraculous light because I've seen how it has helped clear and heal so many people of so many things. Well, near the end of my conversation with these beings, they said, "Oh, by the way, you have not even begun to scratch the surface of the depths there are to love." Whoa, this set me back because I thought I'd been doing pretty good with love. But when they said this to me, it opened my awareness to where I was not expressing love, and it hit me. Of course, how could I have been so blind to what I now see is so obvious? So I've deepened my commitment to be mindful of catching myself when I'm not expressing love and redirecting myself to deepen the love. One effective clearing technique, I've mentioned this before a little bit, and I'll go over it again because it works. I've been using this technique for over 50 years myself. Is first of all, you identify the feeling and the underlying belief to any reaction. So let's say you're feeling irritable or irritated, and you don't even know why. You can assume there's something going on somewhere in your awareness and in your life that's triggering that and bringing it to the surface. But even if it's not, if you just have the feeling, you can say, okay, I'm feeling irritable and angry. Well, you can ask yourself, what would a person have to think or believe to cause that kind of a reaction of being irritable or angry? And you come up with a number of ideas. Well, people are disappointing me. They're not doing what I want them to do. I keep making mistakes, and so I get angry at myself. You can come up with all kinds of explanations for that. So you can take that with the emotional reaction, and then you bring in violet light with the intention that it uncreate and dissolve what is no longer serving you. And here's how you do it. This should best be done either sitting or standing, but not lying down. Now, of course, you can do it lying down if you want to, but almost everybody finds it more difficult to visualize and activate this light and the spinning of the tornado when you're horizontal. So I suggest either do it sitting or standing. Once you're ready, you describe to yourself what you are doing as you are doing it. So you don't need to say it out loud, but it is helpful to move your lips. So then you request your aura to come into 18 inches all around you, no more, no less. And you scan yourself and you check to make sure it is. If it's indented somewhere, fill it with golden light. If it's bulging out, ask it to come in. And then you create an image of a 6-foot diameter violet light, a column of violet light, and you're in the middle of it. So it's roughly 3 feet in front of you, to the side of you, and behind you. 6 feet above your head, 6 feet below your feet. And then you spin the violet light like a tornado. Either direction is okay. Sometimes one way works better than the other, so try it one way first. And you hold the intention that it dissolve the feeling and the cause and the product, whatever that is. Let's say you're angry at somebody or you're upset because you didn't get what you want. You ask the violet to dissolve that, and you spin it for about 30 seconds or so. Now, the more you do this, the clearer you're going to become. Over a period of weeks, your aura will get very clear, and you won't even need to do it for 30 seconds. Probably 5 or 10 seconds will be enough. But the first few times you do it, I'd say between 30 seconds to a minute, until you sense or feel that it's completely dissolved. If you do it for as much as a minute and it still doesn't feel like it's completely dissolved, stop and let it go for a while. Come back to it a little while later. Try it again. It's better to do it multiple times in short bursts through the day than to sit there and to keep trying to do it over one long period. So this process engages your subconscious to continue dissolving it, and you can ask the violet light to continue dissolving until it is completely consumed and dissolved, whether you're thinking about it or not. So it's a way of setting an intention and asking the intelligence of this process to continue until it has completed. As you let go of the lower energy patterns that you struggle with, you automatically join with the creators and the enlightened beings, and you'll create and sustain a universe that you live in that is maintained with love. So this is the way to it.